In this unit of our InDesign CS6 course, we're going to work with a variation of the check boxes that we practiced with in the last unit that are known as radio buttons. Unlike check boxes, which simply allow you on or off, yes or no, either or choices, radio buttons allow you to create and select from multiple choices that you get to specify the specific values for. Now, we can create a group of radio buttons from scratch, but we actually have a series of these that are actually pre-built that we can pull down, and I'll show you how those work in just a minute. Let me begin here by just zooming in on the first area where we're going to set those radio buttons. This spot that says Ship By, and we've got options for UPS, for United Parcel Service, the U.S. Postal Service, and for FedEx. We're going to create a set of radio buttons that will allow us to build on these choices. I'm going to get my selection tool, and I'm going to click on this Sample Buttons and Forms panel that I've got loaded in with my interactive for PDF workspace. And as I do that, it shows actually a series of options that we've got. And I'm going to choose these right here, the ones that say 016, and I'm going to drag them over on the page. We're actually going to replace these check boxes we've got right here with these radio buttons that are actually pre-built when you're working with InDesign CS6. Let me get this panel out of the way. I'm going to move this over just a little bit further, and I'm going to set these to the side just like so. Now I have 3 of these radio buttons, A, B, and C, and that just happens to correspond to what I'm working with. I could also create additional single buttons where I could make this 4 choices, 5 choices. If I wanted it to be only 2 choices, I could delete one of those and do that as well. But in this case, I'm going to take this radio button group and have all 3 of them selected, and I'm going to name it Ship By. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to scale this down by starting to move and holding down the Control and Shift keys, since I'm working with a Windows PC for this chapter. If you're on a Mac, Command Shift will do the same thing, and this will basically allow me to scale these down proportionately so I can make them fit the size of these buttons. Now in this case, they're still pretty large. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to again go to the corner here, in this case the lower right hand corner. I'm going to hold down the Command and Shift keys, and that's going to allow me to scale these to make these buttons roughly the same size of what we're working with for these check boxes we previously created. Now, these were built for doing work with print. We don't really need these anymore. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to click on this first one here, and then get my text tool. I'm going to highlight it, just like so, and I'm going to replace that inline graphic that we created for the print version of this form with a fixed space. So I'm going to go to the Type pull-down menu. I'm going to go to Insert White Space, and I'm going to replace that with an N space. That's the same size as a lowercase n for whatever font attributes you've got. The keyboard shortcut for that for a Windows PC is Control-Shift-N. If you're working with a Mac, the keyboard shortcut would be Command-Shift-N. And as I do that, it's going to replace that space. Now I'm going to use the keyboard shortcut. I'm going to highlight the next one, and I'm going to go Control-Shift-N for my Windows PC, Command-Shift-N again if you're working with a Mac. I'm going to highlight this one. I'm going to go Control-Shift-N one more time, and I've replaced those inline graphics with those boxes. Now it's time for me to move these radio buttons where those used to be. So I'm going to click on the first one right here, and I'm going to move it over just like so, so I can actually place that first UPS button. I'm going to take the second button right here, and I'm going to move it just like so. And I'm going to take the third one, and I'm going to move it over as well. So it lines up evenly. The smart guides let me know where I'm at, and I'll use my own visual skills to make these move closer to line up to the edge of that type for UPS, USPS, and for FedEx. Now, these show different states, but when we create that interactive PDF form, none of them are going to be selected unless I choose this selected by default option. That's what I'm going to do for the first one, because we're going to say, for the sake of argument, shipping by UPS is the least expensive way to do that for us. I'm going to choose that by default, and I'm going to change the button value from choice to UPS. I'm going to click on the second one. Now, I don't want that selected by default, and I'm going to make that one Post Office, just to make it a little bit different than USPS. And then I'm going to click on the third button, and I'm going to give it a choice value of FedEx. When we take this form and we have our respondents fill it out, by default this one will be selected, but they can choose other options between these three if they'd prefer to get it from the post office or by Federal Express. So that's basically how we can use presets to create these buttons. Now, because I've done this once, I'm going to be lazy, hold down the Shift key, and grab all three of these. I'm going to go Control-C to copy, Command-C if you're on a Mac. Then I'm going to go Control-V to paste, and that's going to create a second set of radio buttons. Now I need to rename these, otherwise I'm going to have mirrored values. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take them all, and I'm going to rename them Payment. And move these over, just like so. Now I've already sized these to fit roughly the way I'd like for the ship by options. So by check, money order, or credit card, I simply need to replace these with those end space placeholders. So I'm going to get my text tool. Going to highlight this first inline graphic and go Control-Shift-N. It would be Command-Shift-N if you're working on a Mac. I'm going to do that same keyboard shortcut replacement for the money order and for the credit card. Now I'm going to get my selection tool, and I'm going to click on this button, move it over like so, just kind of bump that up so it's roughly centered. And I'm going to change the value for this to check. Turn off that selected by default, because we're going to say, for the sake of argument, that we don't care which payment option they use as long as they pay us for what we do for the course. I'm going to take this second button and I'm going to line it up using the smart guides to line it up vertically, and then my own visual skills to make that match horizontally next to money order. And then finally, I'm going to scoot this over just a little bit more. Click on this like so. And place the third one. Change that value from FedEx to credit card. And I've got separate values for what happens here, here, and here. Each instance, although this one shows what the click-on state is, and this shows what the normal off state would be, doesn't really matter, because when we create the form, none of them are going to be selected by default. Now I may choose, in this case, for the payment group, to say that it's required. So I'll go up here and select the group. And in this case, I'll say that those are required. They have to pick a choice there. I'm going to do the same thing down below. for my ship by options and say that this group is required to be filled out. Now that doesn't mean that they have to pick any choice in particular here. It just means they have to pick one away from the group to take that and make that work.